The fingerprints never, ever change. Now, if the lines in the hands change, why don't the more intricate, fine skin ridge patterns change like fingerprints? They never, ever change. You can burn your fingerprints off, they will come back precisely as before. Criminals have tried this. So how come certain lines change and fingerprints don't? That doesn't make any sense. The science doesn't add up. Really, this blows my mind because every aspect of our bodies changes all the time. We're in constant flux. Every aspect of our hands even change all the time, except for the fingerprints. Our hand shape, our fingers change because our nature, our psychology is changing. The lines in the hands themselves, the energy rolling through the valleys of our lives change because our lives change all the time. But our fingerprints represent something very, very different, very unique. Each fingerprint, no two fingerprints in the world are the same. They're completely unique, which provides unique insight, unique information. They reveal our life purpose and our life lesson. They reveal what we're meant to be doing with our lives and our greatest, most likely, obstacle and how to overcome them. Part of the reason why I haven't gone into fingerprints before now in depth on this channel is because the majority of the readings that I have done on this channel have been through, well, emails. I've had images emailed to me, and the fingerprints just aren't clear enough. There's not really any point going over a blurry image. I mean, I do my best with Sunday case studies, but that's more for entertainment. I'm going to be showing you 4 different fingerprint types here. This first one is the arch. This is the centered arch. Here we have a loop. There's 2 different types of loop, the ulnar and the radial loop. This is the radial loop. And then there's the whirl. Now there's more to it than this. I'm just showing you the 4 basic types. A lot like the 4 basic elements. There is more to the hand types than just that, but it's a good starting point. So we'll start here. Now, the best way I can begin by explaining what these fingerprints mean is really by likening them to the elements. I think it makes sense to try and stick to this. But I will say before I dig in here that, palmistry, as you probably know, is a world of misinformation. It's completely unregulated. It's like the Wild West. You don't know where to start. No one's guiding you. It's just a whole sea of a mishmash of thoughts and opinions and lies. Most people look at maybe one of the, you know, character classification methods of looking at the hand shapes and types and that sort of thing. Maybe they'll look at the 4 elements of the hands, Fred Getting style, and then they'll jump straight into looking at the lines in the hands, the chirology, the life, head, heart, fate line, that kind of thing. They'll jump straight into that. And that's a big mistake because what we really should be doing is looking at the hand shape and the fingers in great detail. And once we've learned all we can about that, then move on to the dermatoglyphics. And then the chirology. And it really should be this 3-step formula. So we're looking at the fingers, the psychology, and then we're looking at the hand shape, and then we start to look at the lines in the hands to understand the events and causes as to why. But the fingerprints themselves reveal to us this absolutely revelatory information that it's our soul. It's who we are. And we are unchanged. It's our unchanging element about ourselves. It's who we have been in our previous lives and who we will continue to be in our future lives. It represents our soul purpose. It represents why we are here. And this element about us, this fact about us, is unchanging, which is why Richard Unger refers to our fingerprints as our, revealing information as to our soul psychology. And really, all that we know about fingerprints it comes from Noel Jaquin. That's it. Everything, pretty much, absolutely everything you've ever read about fingerprints and what they mean, what they tell us, it comes from one man, and everyone ever since has kind of just rehashed what he wrote, which is kind of dangerous because He wasn't right about everything. Sure, he was absolutely groundbreaking. He was a scientist as well as a hand analysis, so that's pretty amazing. But I think it really is time to look at it with a fresh approach. Now, this first fingerprint here is the arch, commonly known as the arch, and I want to really explain here what this means by relating it to the earth element, because people who possess more of the arches are certainly more grounded. They are rigid. They are unmoving in their opinions. They're stubborn. They are very practical. They're solid. They're stable. Very materially kind of driven. These are very earth hand traits. And people with square hands, square fingers, they often exhibit these similar qualities. They are for stability and routine and order. That's absolutely what they stand for. Now, it's not to say that if you have one of these types of fingerprints, just the arch, then that means that sums you up. Of course, as I've said many times before, we can never diagnose from one sign alone in the hand, so it's very rare anyway. So that's the arch fingerprint. Now, the tented arch here is a lot like the arch, except there's more movement. There's more of an explosive element. And I look at this like a volcano. We've just seen a hill. Now we're looking at a volcano. So there is still some semblance of, groundedness. There's still materialism, but this is one fingerprint higher because I'm showing you these fingerprints in order of height. You've got the ground, earth, you've got fire. Fire is able to move upwards through the earth and at times explode out of it like a volcano. It's one element higher. And I'm not saying that any one element is better than another because that's just not the case. But it's just a way of classifying and understanding for future reference because I'm going to be divulging further into fingerprints in future if you'll stick with me. Now, tented arches are much more passionate. That's the bottom line here. They are um, a combination. They are sort of in between the water and earth. They are able to move, but they are closer to the earth. They're more practical. They're more social. They're everything that we know about fire hands. They are innovative. They are destructive, but necessarily so. They are in constant movement. Essentially, they are socially wise, and they are those among us who inspire us with their movement, with what they say and what they do and how they do it. They are, in many ways, the most efficient among us. And similarly, there's structure, there's order here, because if when you look at this and what this feels like, it's upwards, it's pointing towards something, but it's structured, it's rooted, it's grounded. So there's both stability and instability. It's a combination of the two. At times, people with many tented arches can be very rooted in what should be order and structure, but and then at times they can also be pretty explosive and very passionate. And that pretty much sums up what having the majority of this fingerprint means. Now, next we have the loop. And the loop, for me, looks like a wave. And it absolutely is associated with the water element. Loops are a lot like water hands in what they reveal. They're showing a flexible, adaptable, creative nature, an emotional nature, intelligent, but maybe not so grounded at times. Maybe a little bit too dreamy, deep thinking, getting into their own thoughts, and essentially just being a bit emotional. I really like using that word because it's not necessarily a weakness as a lot of people think of it. In fact, it's a tremendous strength. The loop represents that extreme emotionality, creativity, that ability to love in almost an unconditional, uncontrollable wave crashing into someone, and it's quite a beautiful thing. But at times, it is not the most realistic trait to have, And it represents love and creativity. It represents that the very most watery sort of elements to us, and what that means. Water is the third element I'm showing you here, because you have the earth, you have fire, which is just above earth, and then you have water, which can obviously it be underground, on the ground. It can precipitate, it can rise as steam and then land once again. Water is the most fluid, the most adapted, the most flexible. It gets pushed around the most, a lot like water hands. And I feel like this is why it's really relevant to kind of reveal these fingerprints in this way and in this order. Because, and I'll get to why in this order it's important. It's hard to explain, but I'll get to it. Now, the last fingerprint I'm going to show you, and there are more fingerprints, there's maybe 8 or so, but I'm showing you 4 here. This is the whirl fingerprint, and it's like looking into the eye of a storm. You may have guessed that we were coming to wind next, but it literally looks like looking down the eye of a tornado. And obviously, this is the highest element I'm going to be revealing, and obviously, it's a much more conceptual, idealistic, academic, debates-driven, conversation-led. It's constantly in movements, constantly spinning. It's very chaotic, and it throws everything up in the air for everyone else. A little bit sort of harebrained, maybe, but in constant thought. These are very kind of people with lots of worlds are constantly trying to see things from every perspective. They're constantly moving in their thoughts. There's a great sense of duality, um, and specific sort of perspective, individuality about them. The whirl print is the highest element. It's the furthest off the floor, because it's in our it's above us. It's in our minds. The earth is rooted to the floor and very logical, very rational. The fire is more able to see things from a higher perspective and feels more with the heart. There's more passion there. Water feels even more strongly, and air is so detached from um, those material and, I suppose, worldly desires, and that which is stuck to the earth, that they are these are concepts, these are ideas, they are hatched from the rest of us in that way. Those with many worlds, as I've mentioned, are in sort of constant movement, constantly trying to figure it out what it is that they should be doing with their lives. Einstein had 7 worlds, it really creates an immense amount of duality and individuality. Now, that's not to say that if you have that many worlds, then you're instantly a mad genius scientist, but it certainly creates a very individual perspective about you, if that's the case. So now I've gotten the basics out of the way. The thing to do is to look at every single finger and thumb, and really analyze what we're looking at here. Now there are other ones. Here is commonly referred to as a double loop, or a composite whirl. Sometimes this is referred to as, and it's both. It's not quite a loop. It's not quite a whirl. It's a bit of both. And this is partly the reason why I'm kind of staggering the height of the elements, because I would place this fingerprint, for example, in between a whirl and a loop in terms of its height. And by positioning where each fingerprint is in terms of height on every finger, we get an idea as to the level of understanding as to what each finger represents. And we can begin to understand a person's life purpose and life lesson. Now, the only real way to explain What I'm talking about is to just show you an example. This is really the only way, and I'm gonna explain it here. So I have here the hands of someone who has whorls on all fingertips, except for, as you've already seen in the print, um, you can't see it there, so that's the wrong one, but you can see it here. This is the double loop or composite whorl, and all other fingertips have the whorl fingerprints. They're all the highest wind element, if you like. Every single one is a whorl. And I know this because I've looked on the thumbs as well. They're all whorls, except for the middle finger on the right hand. Now, this is why it's so very important to really have a great understanding of chirognomy and what the left hand means, what the right hand means, and what each finger means about our specific pillar of our personalities. Because the left hand is what's internal, the right hand is what's external. The fingers all provide us with clues about our psychology. Honey wants to make a cameo. Sloppy, sloppy, sloppy. So, as you already know, if you watched many of my other videos, the little finger represents communication. Our Apollo, our ring finger, represents creativity. The middle finger represents societal contribution, duty, responsibility. The index finger represents power. And the thumb represents overall success. Now, this is true as far as the right hand is concerned. When it comes to the left hand, it's a little bit different. The little finger represents insight. The Apollo finger represents innovation. The middle finger represents guilt or shame. It's more about integrity. The left hand index finger is more about passion. It's more introverted sense of the self. And then the left-hand thumb is more about family. So they all represent, they're all on the same level, but one is internal, one is external. Now, the real reason I'm going to come back to that big point that I've been sort of touching on, the reason for having the fingerprints at a certain uh, height order, if you like. Again, no one element, no one fingerprint is better than another. But it's really important to get an understanding as to which fingerprint is highest on which finger to really know where a person's life purpose and or life lesson is. Now, with this example that I'm showing you here, the right hand middle finger, as we've seen, has this double loop, this composite whorl, is the lowest fingerprint. Only just, but it is still the lowest. It's in between water and air. The rest of the fingerprints are all whorls. They're all air. So this is the lowest. This is the right hand middle finger. So it's all about responsibility. The lowest fingerprint on a hand will provide you with clues as to a person's life lesson. I feel like I'm kind of revealing something here which is really understated because this is really powerful stuff. This is absolutely revelatory stuff. If you can define someone's life lesson, you may well hold the key to helping them avoid living their life in a certain way, helping them on a path towards real empowerment. That's huge. That's all we can do as palmists. So if you can really understand a person's soul psychology, and get to the bottom of the heart of their most likely obstacle that they are to face in life and find a way for them, just by acknowledging and understanding this, they already are empowered because they already have clues as to how to avoid continuing making these mistakes. Now, when it comes to what this means, you might well have guessed it. If this is the finger of responsibility, and this is the lowest possible fingerprint we can find, the life lesson is all about being responsible. The key to fulfillment for this person is that they must be responsible for everything in their lives, otherwise all is lost. It is likely that they fall into certain patterns of irresponsibility. They must take responsibility for their actions, otherwise they may well face dire consequences. That is what this is showing for this person. As long as a person with this particular life lesson assignment, if you like, acknowledges this and takes responsibility for their each and every action, they will feel a great level of satisfaction about their own integrity, about who they are and how they are completing their life's work, as well as actually just being very successful in life. Because taking responsibility for their actions will empower, will enable them, and will lead them to very positive outcomes and results. Now, because the lowest fingerprint here is only just lower, it's not an extreme case of irresponsibility. I just want to make that clear. If we had seen an arch, so if we had seen this fingerprint alongside all other fingerprints are whorls, and on the middle right finger we see this arch, that would be something to be very concerned about. And I would advise fairly strict and impartial counsel with quite a strong and forceful encouragement, just so that they are fully aware of what their likely potential kind of soul psychological pattern is. And really, this is their life lesson. This is what they have to learn. And often we can't learn lessons by being told things. But if we are made aware of it, and the next time we fall into that, we're reminded because we've already been told about it, and it sort of jolts us, and we're much less likely to fall into that pattern again. Sometimes we just need to be reminded by our own mistake once, and that's it. Being told it is massively empowering. So because their right middle fingerprint is just a little bit lower than the whirl, it creates a small level of irresponsibility. It's not as big as, it's nothing extreme anyway, but it is still something. To me, what this represents is that they've almost completed this life lesson. It's like in a previous life, their fingerprints were probably very, very slightly different. And this is what I strongly feel, that our fingerprints change with each life that we live, depending on the lessons that we've learned and the purpose that we have fulfilled. Now, I've mentioned life lesson. Let's get on to what the life purpose is. And the way in which we figure out our life purpose is the opposite from the life lesson. We look at the highest fingerprint on all fingertips. And sometimes that can't be done. Sometimes we see the same fingerprint on all fingertips. That's kind of rare, but it does happen. In fact, this month I've seen it happen 3 times. Um, and that has its own story. That's a bit more complicated. But we look the way in which we determine a life purpose is to find the highest fingerprint and take it from there. So, looking at my own fingerprints, I have discovered that my life lesson, I can't remember it now, but my life purpose, and I found this really, really interesting. It's around pioneering, and it's around responsibility. So I actually have the opposite. I have my highest fingerprint is the whirl, and it's on my right hand middle finger. So mine is all about responsibility, and it's about finding satisfaction through roles of service. And my life purpose is quite literally to uh, have integrity towards my craft, and to convince skeptics. That's quite literally my life purpose. I find it crazy that I'm venturing down this road of palmistry, and and that's what my fingerprints tell me. And it's not like there's any room for um, interpretation here. And that's what, for me, that's what I find so validating about fingerprint analysis, is that it's very, very direct. There really is very little room for subjective interpretation. And as much as I feel like I'm quite a strong interpretator visually, that is a fundamental part of palmistry that I really enjoy, because it's not something you can argue with. You know, you just have to accept it. You have to swallow it. And the more you think on it, the more you realize, actually, that's so true. It's so right. And sometimes you will find that you have several fingerprints in combination, in competition with each other in terms of that, being the highest one. And that's when you have to just sort of add them together and figure out what that means. Um, and so that's how I came to that conclusion of being a pioneer, is because it's innovation. It is, forgive me, I'm trying to remember, creativity plus responsibility plus power. And that provides us with an image. Those three uh, strongest, highest, I can say, fingerprints provide a conclusion, provide an image that is pioneering. And that's how it kind of led me down that conclusion. It's not straightforward sometimes, and there are certain rules to it, but a lot of the time you can come to a fairly clear conclusion as to a person's life purpose and life lesson. So, just for argument's sake here, let's just say that we have here, um, on this hand, we look at the fingerprints here, and we've got a loop, and then we've got another loop, and then we've got a peacock's eye. So this is a combination of a whirl and a loop. So it's in between. So it's not quite the highest. And then we've got a whirl, which is the highest. And then a little finger, we've got another whirl, which is actually very rare to find on a little finger. So the two highest fingerprints are on, this is the right hand. So we're looking at creativity and communication. So this provides us with what would you say? Put both of those together. You've got the picture of someone who's a poet, a lyricist, or a writer, or they could be involved in, maybe rapping, maybe singing. There is in some way a combination of creating through their communicative abilities, could even be musically. So that's just, yeah, and understanding a person's soul psychology, after you've looked at their own psychology, you get a strong understanding as to who they are, and really what they should be doing with their lives. And then when you look at, so we've already determined creativity through an expressive communicative outlet. We've got a long Jupiter finger. Mercury is very low set though, so we're probably not going to be singing. We're not going to be throwing ourselves on stage. We don't quite have that confidence, but we do have something of a writer's fork. So, this is how we conclude, and this is how we can start to provide an accurate, um, con- conclusion, an accurate picture as to what it is a person should be doing. Just potential full stop, what their potential is. And this, again, is all about providing a positive outcome. It's about guidance, it's about healing. It's about supporting someone to make the very best possible decisions in life with what they have, with what their hands are telling them. So I do hope you've gained some understanding, some value from this video. Please do let me know your thoughts on fingerprint analysis. If you would like a palm reading, please do visit my website. Check it out. You can book there, and I'm quite happy to tell you what your life lesson is, and life purpose as well. Thank you very much for watching. Please do subscribe, and I shall see you on the next video.